Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Connie's Corner. So, the video I made the other day, I called it my Batman reaction because really, it wasn't a review. Really, what it was is you were witnessing just my post-colloidal cigarette time. Needless to say, I enjoyed that film very much. So that was just my fresh out of the theater. This is how I feel. I've watched it a couple more times since then, so I've had time to think and I'm very organized. I wrote down some notes so that I can clip through this actual real spoiler review for you, and it's coherent. It isn't just me going, because it would be all jittery because I just love this character so much. Again, spoiler thoughts, but the movie opens today, so everyone should be able to get a chance to see it. If you haven't seen the movie, I am going to talk spoiler things. Don't ruin this movie for yourself, depending on your spoiler threshold. Watch it and come back if you want to hear what I have to say. So, my actual official thoughts. Is this a perfect movie? No. But no movie's perfect, except for Casablanca. And, well, okay, a couple others. But it is a perfect Batman movie, I think. This is how I want my Batman. What's great about Batman is how flexible he is. He can be many different things to many different people because we've had so many versions of him. So I really think that they get a lot right with this one, and it just hit all the right buttons with me. So if you watch this movie and you're like, I just don't get it, I don't get why people are praising it, you know, either it's not your kind of movie at all, or maybe it's just not your Batman, and that's fine. Okay, so I want to talk about what I liked because it's a much longer list. There are a few things I'm like, So again, it's only been days, it's still fresh, but I think my overall feeling is not going to change. Overall presentation, excellent. I mentioned this in my reaction the other night. I love the cinematography. I love the camera work. I love the sound design, the score, the costumes. That was a really good bat suit. To get ready for this movie, I've been marathoning any Batman movie that I had time for. And I was looking at their suits and I'm like, So I do think this is the best bat suit we've gotten. Production design, I liked most of it. Watching it again, I did think Wayne Tower was a little ridiculous. I'm like, wow, this kind of looks, it didn't fit with everything else that was going on in Gotham City. Gotham City felt very real, it felt very lived in. You could feel the dirt. I could almost smell this city. You know what I mean? So I didn't like Wayne Tower, but you barely see Wayne Tower. And this is a nitpick. This is not like, oh, how dare they? It just watching it again and trying to look for things. I'm like, this is an odd choice. I don't know what's with the whole Gothic cathedral castle kind of vibe. So that's a thing. Another big thing, and I can't believe I didn't bring this up because I felt so strongly about it when I came out. I love the tech in this movie. We have cell phones and we have social media, and that's all great. But I like that on Batman's end of it, like he's watching things through his special eye tech, but it was all like gritty and, it looked really like street level and, so it wasn't polished. That's what I really like about this version. You get the sense that people have dirt under their fingernails and their hair is greasy. And I like that his tech was a little bit grainy. Like it definitely had that he made it himself kind of look, because when you think about Batman's history, some bat caves are really decked out and some Batmobiles are really decked out. Like if you make it too flashy, it's like, now come on, I know he's a genius, but did he really build all that himself and he made it that good? I think this was a believable Batcave, Batmobile, and his individual pieces of tech. It felt realistic. It felt like, sure, he would have enough smarts to assemble that himself, kind of like how the Riddler clearly assembled that neck color bomb and stuff. It all felt like stuff they could actually make. It wasn't so fantastic that it's like, well, of course he can afford to make it because he's Bruce Wayne, but who does he have to pay off going, now make this thing and make it in the shape of a bat, but then I'm going to like Men in Black mind wipe you so that you don't know that I'm Batman. We have to explore where his stuff comes from. So I really liked how the tech was made in this movie. That was a big plus for me. Now the Batmobile. I usually love the Batmobile always, but I'll tell you, as I rewatch some of the older films, I'm like, God, these Batmobiles, they're okay. And I'm not a car person, But the idea of using like I think muscle car is the right word. You know, when I look at the Batmobile, I think Mustang. I don't know if Mustang is correct, but it had that kind of shape. Um, and they didn't use it too much. I'm glad the Batmobile isn't in every single Batman scene, so that's good. It, like a lot of things in this movie, used sparingly but effectively. So really like the Batmobile. And for the overall feeling of the movie, I like all the genre mixing. Like a lot of people are calling this noir and a modern noir, and there's those elements for sure. But I would say if I wouldn't even call this a comic book movie. This is a graphic novel movie for sure. But it's mixed with noir, and it's mixed with like a thriller like Silence of the Lambs, or a serial killer type movie like Seven. But also, and I'm surprised I'm not reading this in reviews, it's definitely got that Western feeling. We don't just hear Batman before we see him. There's a lot of shots of his feet. So it's like, it's like, boom, boom. He's walking, and he's not wearing spurs, but he might as well, because he definitely has that whole, I'm the sheriff in this town. You better get on out of here, pilgrim, kind of. Thank God he's not saying that, but I felt like his body was channeling a lot of John Wayne and that whole genre. And it's such a good mix. I never would have thought noir and Western would work, but you sprinkle that all on top of Batman, it actually works very well. So wonderful genre mixing. The suspense in this movie is really, really good. I have to admit, I was nervous. I was trying not to watch anything. I didn't see the leaks. I didn't watch a lot of promotional material. I never watched the press tour stuff. I worry that I'm going to ruin the movie because I'll see it before I get to see it, and I wanted to have fun. But I was nervous because they were good about hiding the Riddler. And I like serial killer movies, but I don't want to see things. So I'm glad that they took their time. So the opening scene with the mayor, you knew he was going to die. And I was like, okay, they might cut away, but are they going to show it? And if they show it, what do they show? That was handled very well. And I was really nervous about the bomb around the neck. I'm like, I don't want to see a skull actually. I don't want to see that. So the first time I watched it, I actually looked away. I was like, I can't. I waited for the timer to get down to 7 seconds. And I was like, they might show it. So I kind of did this. But I watched it again with my husband, and he didn't look away ever. And I said, okay, but do you actually see skull? He's like, no, you see an explosion and you see Batman falling back, but it doesn't actually show that. I was just that afraid because I'm a squeamish person. So knowing that there's not a lot of, that I know it's not rated R, but PG-13 can still be, I've seen PG-13 movies that I'm like, oh, wow, I can't believe they got away with that. So I think it just depends on the context, the volume of it, all those things. So it was definitely terrifying. This movie is scary, which I do think is one point. All handled beautifully. The biggest thing is this film just gets Batman, the mythos, really, really right. There's so many comics accurate thing. And I'm not a complete expert, but I've read a lot. And so I appreciate all those little nods that are there for those of us who are like, right, I read my Batman. And I really appreciate that this was not an origin story for Batman. We're not going to waste time with the whole, oh no, his parents, oh, the pearls, oh, the lone gunman. Like I said in my reaction, we just don't need it. Through osmosis, everyone on this planet, even people who are like, Batman, who's that? They know how Bruce Wayne parents die. They just know. They know how the Waynes die. Don't need to show it. And I appreciate that we're not wasting time on that. So he's a new Batman, but he's not a brand new Batman. We're going to skip that first part. I think that's excellent. And also, it's not that other movies haven't done this, but I really appreciate that because he's new, they weren't afraid to show this Batman make mistakes. I think that's important. Adam West, his Batman is very special to me because it was the first Batman I ever saw, but he definitely had that whole, yes, I knew that all along. Precisely, Robin. I knew that. I'm Batman. I'm so smart. When you're a kid, you're not paying attention to that. But as an adult, it comes across as a little like, okay, you don't have to be a know-it-all about it. Don't be a dick. I love Adam West. I don't mean to blaspheme, rest his soul. but it's just nice to have a Batman who makes mistakes, because he is human. The reason Batman is so relatable is he wasn't bitten by a radioactive spider. He's not an alien from another planet, he's not super juiced somehow. He's just a guy. He has resources and he has intellect. To stay on the mistake theme, I think Batman's biggest mistake is his mission statement is very, I am vengeance. And he opens with, okay, it's been 2 years of this and I'm not making an effect, am I? Because crime is up, it's not down. And he walks around sporting vengeance. So this movie is an origin story, but it's not for him, it's for the Riddler. The Riddler comes out and says, you inspired me. He thinks they're partners, he thinks they're going to be pals and that they're going to do this together. So it's funny how he completely misjudges him. That's so refreshing. I was fooled, right there with Batman when I thought the Riddler had figured out that he's Bruce Wayne. That was such a good scene where he's like taunting, but then he just changes on time. He's like, oh yeah, it's a real shame I didn't get him. And I'm like, wait, did you not put that together? Oh, that's so great. He didn't find out. But he explains to him, and then at the end of the arena, when they get those goons round up and they're like, well, who are you? And the one says, I am vengeance. It really puts a button on that whole, I have had an impact on this city, but not in the right way. So I like that he's going to abandon his I am vengeance, and instead he's going to be the beacon of hope. He's going to be the symbol of justice, as the Batman that we know. So this leads me to a criticism that I want to touch on, because this is a good argument for, some people have said, oh, the Bruce Wayne Batman ratio is not where we want it. There's a lot of Batman, which is not a bad thing, but there's not enough Bruce Wayne. I would argue that for this reason that I just discussed, it's important to not have Bruce Wayne, because he's too hurt and injured, and he's just thinking about the mission. But this case has taught him to take a step back and go, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Like how the mayor-elect is like, oh, you need to do more for his city. Maybe a little light bulb will go off and he's like, okay, if I'm honest, there's certain things that Bruce Wayne can do that Batman can't. Bruce Wayne is also a tool. So maybe he'll develop Bruce Wayne and then, don that persona later, because again, he's a new Batman. So maybe he just needed time. He can't be like day one, I know, look, I'm Bruce Wayne. I'm Batman. I'm Bruce Wayne, like that whole, he wouldn't have thought of that on day one. So I actually think that justifies the lack of Bruce Wayne. I think when you look at that part of the narrative, and it might've been on purpose, or maybe I'm just reaching here, I don't think so. I think that explains the lack of Bruce Wayne. It did not bother me, because I feel like there's been Batman movies that have very little Batman. So a movie that has Batman in the title, if you don't have a lot of Batman in it, I'm like, well, what are we doing here? Now, obviously, by association, sort of like an adjacent to this is, if you don't have a lot of Bruce Wayne, you don't have a lot of Alfred. I've seen complaints about that. I think that's fair. It's a shame you don't get a lot of Alfred in this, because we're so used to Batman doesn't narrate normally, and he doesn't really do the monologuing with people that he's talking to. So he talks to Alfred a lot. He's got to get it out of him somehow. So we don't have that here. Ergo, we do have the narration. In my reaction, I said I didn't like the narration, but some people have pointed out to me, oh yeah, but it's like comics, because in the comics he has his thought bubbles, and that's the only way to know what he's thinking. Touche. You're right. That's a very good point. And I just didn't like the narration after the first viewing, because when it opened with it, I was like, oh no, is he going to narrate the whole time? He didn't. It was beginning and end, and I was like, oh, that's so. Watching it a second time, I was more on board with the narration. And some people don't like the casting. I don't think that's fair. I think casting wise, remember how we were promised a lot of Jared Leto in the first Suicide Squad movie, and then all his scenes got cut, so we got snippets. I don't think you can really judge Jared Leto's version of Joker because of the movie we got. We just didn't get enough to make a real decision. I think this is similar. Stay with me. I know you might be like, what is she saying? I think his scenes were so brief that it's kind of hard to say, was Andy Serkis a good fit for Alfred? I think for the story that they were telling, it's okay that Alfred got pushed to the side. You know what I mean? It didn't bother me, but if Alfred's one of your favorite characters, I totally understand that complaint. That makes sense. So how did we end up here? Well, the biggest thing is the length of the movie. I've been thinking about this a lot. This is the one part of my review that might change with time, but I want to tell you what my thoughts are as of this moment, because this is when we're all going to be talking about the movie, right? Is the movie too long? Is it? I don't think it's too long, but it's what I wanted. You know, if I could articulate what kind of Batman I wanted, I didn't know it was this, but as it unfolded before me, I was like, yes, 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 yes. So I did. The reason I've seen this multiple times is I purposely took people with me that like Batman, but they don't love it the way I do. I'm like, I need your unbiased opinion because you don't love it the way I do. And I want you to be honest. Watch this movie with me. And my number one question is, when we're done, is it too long? And they said no. And I said, but people are saying it's too long. It's got to be coming from somewhere. No one said this about Endgame, by the way. No one was like, it's too long. Everyone was like, no, you need all that time because look at all the characters. And they said, well, maybe it is too long for some, but then the new question is, if it is, what do you cut? I think that's the real question. I don't know what to cut out of this movie. To tell the story they're telling, if you cut something, you're going to lose context, right? So that's a hard one. Let's put a pin in that for just a sec. But to me, it's like, well, what do you cut? What do you cut, right? So I started to think, okay, well, why don't I start with what I didn't like about the movie? Maybe I could cut that. This is a gray zone too. I only have a couple little things that I didn't like. They don't break the movie at all. I don't think they ruin the movie, hinder its quality really. Partly because, well, one is an easy fix, but one, I don't know how to do it better. I would need some time. I'm not a writer, so I don't want to tell writers what to do. So something about the Waynes in this movie. I don't like something. Maybe it's because they were building up to, oh my God, it's about the Waynes. Kind of. What I did like is the whole, ooh, Martha's crazy. She comes from a crazy line of people. I think it's important to put that in this exact version because you know what we haven't really gotten in the movies yet is the unhinged Batman. What kind of person of their own volition dresses up like a bat and goes out and fights crime, right? I think you have to be a little crazy and you have to have a little bit of that criminal mindset. You have to know what you're attacking, right? To be effective the way Batman is towards criminals, he almost has to be a criminal himself. He has his rules, you know, no killing, no gun, all that beautiful stuff. But he also has principles. So it's his job to look for hope and there's a way to rehabilitate people. So he's not all the way there, but he's got to have a touch of it. So I think bringing that up in Martha is a very good idea. So I like that part. But I don't know. There's something about the Wayne's involvement in the story and how they're connected and how that leads to the whole, this is why they died. I'm more on board with the whole, it was a random crime gone wrong, that there was no motive, they weren't targeted. I like that better, but obviously there's nothing wrong with saying, oh yeah, there was a target on their back, because then Bruce has a choice. Do I avenge them proper because now I have a target? Maybe. The movie does a good job of going, maybe it was this person, maybe it was Maroni, maybe it was, you know, Carmine. Ooh, you know, they left it open enough so that if you want it to be Carmine Falcone, that's who killed him. But they don't punctuate it. So you can make up your own mind. I don't know. There's something about the Waynes. I don't like it. That's the only part that made me go, want to work on that. You know, everyone's talking about how this is borrowing heavily from The Long Halloween, and it does. But also the Earth One thing, that brings up the whole Martha's in Arkham and ooh. So, I mean, there's several Batman comics. So this is not one comics being adapted. They're like, we like this bit from this comic and we like this bit from this comic. So there's a lot of mixing. That's all good. Let's see. The Waynes. Oh, so I didn't like that. The other thing that I think is the easier thing to fix, the only time I actually rolled my eyes was when we had our Joker reveal. Now, perfectly executed. It's a good scene. It's a good use of that. I'm just a little sad because I'm like, okay, they didn't show the Waynes dying and they didn't show Batman becoming Batman. I was like, yes, thank you, Warner Brothers, for just trusting Matt Reeves to tell his story. That moment wasn't poorly done. I just hate that it was there. I'm like, do you not trust audiences to be excited for this on its own? I mean, everything, because it's late in the movie. If you don't like the movie by that point, I don't think that's going to save it. It's too small. It feels a little like, well, people aren't going to be excited unless Joker's involved. Now, I love the Joker. Everyone loves the Joker, okay? The crown jewel of the Rogues Gallery. But it is possible to have a good Batman film that has nothing to do with the Joker. I don't want that to be the new thing that they're lazy and they sit on going, oh, we got to have Joker involved somehow. Otherwise, people aren't going to come or they're not going to care. They're not going to be excited. Again, maybe I'm reaching here, but that's what that communicated to me. Now, I did take my daughter to see this. We had a talk because she's at that age where I think she's old enough to handle more mature movies. We're just going to do a case by case thing. And I explained, I said, no, this is very adult and it's long. But if you think you can handle it, I'm going to let you watch this. And she likes Batman too. So she's like, no, I'm going to watch Batman. We got to that scene and she's not old enough to really do the whole connecting the dots. But I loved how when that happened, because they don't come out and say he's the Joker, it's inferred. But she leaned over to me and she was like, oh, is that the Joker? That did make me feel a little bit better about it. I was like, okay, see, if that is their intention, you can't say they're not doing their job. Every time I've gone, there have been giggles or gasp or some sort of reaction to that moment. And hers was my favorite, just personally. So does it need to be there? I don't think so. I would cut it out. But it's so small. It's not like it, oh, well, you wrecked my movie. I was having such a good time and then you ruined it. All right. So that just leaves me with, why don't we talk about the characters themselves, to end this. Because I haven't done that. I haven't gone like character by character. And I'm not going to do everyone. Obviously, I'm just going to do the big players. So obviously, we got to start with Batman. Robert Pattinson as Batman. I was never worried. I was like, no, he'll do a good job. You know why? And it's partly because people laughed when Michael Keaton was cast back in the 80s. People were all like, Christian Bale, really? That was a conversation. When people heard that Heath Ledger was going to play the Joker, you hadn't seen it yet. That was a joke. People were like, that's a terrible idea. People didn't like the thought of Daniel Craig playing Bond. Well, guess who's laughing now? All of these actors. I've just heard too many times in my lifespan, I've heard people say, I don't like this casting. Well, you weren't in the room. You don't know what they showed that casting director. Until I see the movie itself, I'm not going to make up my mind about anybody. They will clearly surprise you. Now, is Robert Pattinson my Batman? Well, he is in the sense that I think he was perfect in this exact movie, this exact storytelling, like style-wise. It's hard because Kevin Conroy did the voice for the animated series, and that was my formative years. So, and that was a TV show, so I got to spend every day 4:30 for 3 or 4 years. Kevin Conroy was my Batman. It's a little unfair because I just got so much time, and then all the time has gone by, and I rewatch it, all the time. So on the one hand, you could say, oh, it's the bright, shiny new thing, and it's a breath of fresh air into the character. That's true. But also there's some comfort in all the Batman you've had up until this point. So I don't know if I want to say he is my Batman, but I do think he is perfect for this version of the character. I think he did a great job. So all those naysayers, they can shut up now. All right, now, so Zoe Kravitz says Selena. Also great. I've always been lukewarm to Catwoman. I don't hate her. I don't love her. She's just kind of there. Michelle Pfeiffer is an icon as, the role. But Zoe Kravitz is definitely doing her own thing, and she is right out of Batman Year One. Looks just like that graphic art. Oh yeah, that reminds me. So this Batman, he looks. Let's see, Neil Neil Adams, and Jim Aparo, right? I think he looks like he walked right out of those pages. So I love how they come right off. So I liked, obviously, our two leads there, the Bat and the Cat. They look just like their comics counterpart. But it's also nice to mix that with people that you would not expect. The Riddler, reimagining him as a Zodiac killer type. That is brilliant, because the Riddler, I've always liked the Riddler, but I always thought of him as just like this silly person. It's kind of like how DC has Kite Man and Polka Dot Man. On paper, that just sounds so stupid, especially when you look at, like, I think it's their Silver Age iterations. It's like, God, they look so dumb. But they've really made a comeback. Like Kite Man on the Harley and the Harley Quinn show. I actually like I can't believe I like Kite Man. This is so weird. And Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad. Oh my God, totally. So same thing. I appreciate that DC at least knows how to take their sillier looking characters and make us take them seriously. Very good version of the Riddler. I mean, this Riddler was scary. I'm terrified of this man. So good job, Paul Dano. Very good. And I did mention this in my reaction, but oh my God, the Penguin, forget about it. Dare I say that this is a career-defining role for Colin? I mean, I still can't believe that's who's under there. Again, small character sprinkled in there, but just enough where we see him, because it is more than Alfred, and you really get to see him and you fall in love. So that this is laying the groundwork done right. There's been a lot of talk about sequels already. I'm not ready to go there. I just want to enjoy what I have at the moment. But if part of the reason this movie exists is to set up future projects, using the Penguin the way they did, this is how you set it up, because he's functional in this movie, but they don't give the whole farm away. That way, when you say things like, by the way, his solo show is coming, you already got my eyeballs. I'm coming, right? So very, very good. My absolute favorite outside of Batman is Jim Gordon. Oh my God. Jeffrey Wright. This is definitely my, maybe Robert Pattinson isn't my Batman. I don't know if I'm comfortable saying that yet, but Jeffrey Wright is my Commissioner Gordon, because Commissioner Gordon has always been like a tertiary character to me until Gary Oldman in the Nolan versions. I'll never forget, I went to a midnight screening for The Dark Knight, and you know how they pull that trick on Joker? They make him think, they make Joker think, and everyone think that Jim is dead. And when he's part of the sting operation that takes him down, when he takes off the helmet, like, we gotcha, my audience erupted in applause. Everyone was just like, yay! That was the first moment that I was like, we care about Commissioner Gordon. He's not just the guy who throws on the signal, goes, help us, Batman. From a visual media. Obviously, in the comics, Jim Gordon's a great character. It was so nice to see that on the screen. So I also said this in my reaction video. To me, this is a Batman Gordon team movie. It's not really about Batman and Alfred or Batman and Robin or even Batman and Catwoman. This is a Batman Gordon centric. I think that's refreshing. It's nice to make Jim Gordon feel more relevant and not just, oh, you're just the cop who's like the friend of the Batman. Bleh. So I think that's really, really good. Definitely my Jim Gordon, for sure. For sure. I love this movie. It's not a perfect movie, but I think it's a perfect Batman movie. If you think it's too long, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you could cut the Penguin out, but then you would lose that great car chase and all that setup for how the story ends. It's like, oh, all these other people are out of the way. Maybe he can grab it while it's free. again, do we want to sacrifice setup? I don't need setup right now. I don't need them to get me excited about sequels. Just make a good movie. And then if you say, hey, that was so good, we want to let you do a sequel, or we want you to do some streaming shows. I'm like, well, sure. Just trust your creative team to do a good job, because they did a good job here. If you give them more money and say, just do it again, as long as they have ideas, and Matt Reeves has said he has ideas, great. So yeah, I'm like, okay, or you could cut out Catwoman, but people love Catwoman, and you don't want it to be too, she's really the only female character of coincidence. So do you really want to cut your only female character? Like, I don't know. I don't know how you cut something without changing the story. You would have to tell a different story. So I'm not a writer. Maybe someone who's very good at writing say, oh, if you snip this and you snip this, you shave off 20 minutes, and that'll just do a world of good for those who can't handle, because 3 hours is asking a lot of people. If you're not a hardcore fan. So I get that. I want to end with, I think this is very important. The only thing I'm seeing online that makes me sad is this whole, because of things that are going on in the studios for the last however many years, some people seem to think that if you like this Batman, that you're being a traitor to Zack Snyder and Ben Affleck. Like, I don't understand that. There is room for all these Batman. We can have the Batman and the Lego Batman come out in the same year, and you're not being a traitor to Batman the character. He is flexible. He is versatile. You can have lots of Batman. I know you don't want to oversaturate. You don't want to overdo it. That's why I was nervous that they were even making this movie. But hey, as long as they're competent and they do this, I say make as many Batman movies as you want. But if you don't make any more, thank God we have some good ones, right? You are allowed to like Ben Affleck and Robert Pattinson at the same time. You are allowed to like Snyder and Reeves at the same time. I'm not going to live in a world where we're going to argue whether or not gender is non-binary, but your opinion about a Batman approach is. That does not make sense. I love Zack Snyder. I love Matt Reeves. I think they both respect the material. I think Robert Pattinson makes a very good early novice Batman, and Ben Affleck has definitely got that old man, on the brink of retirement Batman. And all the other Batman are good middle. They're in the middle Batman, right? All good. Like what you like. And you're allowed to like more than one. Maybe there's only room for one at to be the top if you want to rank. I don't want to rank. Now I'll rank Batmobiles, I'll rank the Batman costume. I'm actually more comfortable ranking some of the villains even, but I don't think it's fair to say if you love Robert Pattinson, that means you've betrayed Ben Affleck, or vice versa. You can like both. I don't want to hear this talk. That's the only thing I don't want to hear. Otherwise, if you love this movie, awesome. I hope we can be buddies. If you don't like this movie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it took 3 years or 3 hours, probably felt like years, away from you. That's really sad. But those are my spoilery thoughts on this epic movie. Loved it. Loved it. I hope you had fun too. Thank you for joining me and hearing my thoughts. And I'll talk to you again soon, hopefully.